Nigeria, by extension Africa, battles a growing youthful population, and with little or no meaningful engagement, leaves a ticking time bomb on our hands. We are a blessed continent with great wealth, both in people and material. Our focus on ways remains driving conversations that affects us all. Topics in the news, social concerns, politics, leadership, governance, empowerment, resource management, conflict management, finance, SME sustainability, technological innovation, food security, health, education, brain drain, our well-being, citizenship, and much more. Our goal is to continuously drive these conversations, keep them burning at the table to effect a positive change, both for our nation and continent. Ways, what are you saying, has a secret ingredient that completes the conversation every single episode, and that ingredient is you. Our past conversations shaped our yesterday. To shape our tomorrow, we must keep talking. So, I want to hear you. Be a part of our live conversations Mondays through Fridays. And let's all have our say.
Good evening and welcome to Waves Primetime. My name is Choma Kalu, and tonight we're going to be addressing a very pressing issue that has gripped Nigerians in cities and in towns alike. And we're talking about the housing costs, right? So housing costs in Nigeria generally, regardless of where you are, the costs are soaring, and many tenants, they feel very squeezed. And now in response, the House of Representatives has proposed a bold measure, which is capping annual rent increases at no more than 20% of the existing rent, regardless of the infrastructure upgrades or location advantages, right? So the motion was moved by Honorable Basi Akiba, and it was described it described rampant arbitrary rent hikes, as we have seen over and over. It described as a form of exploitation, especially in areas where you come to and there are new roads that have been built or some new amenities, and then the landlords just jump in and they jack up rents, very outrageously. So the House is also urging the federal government to invest more in affordable housing and direct states to enforce tenancy laws. Now, all of these things we wanted, but we're asking a question: will this proposed cap protect tenants, or will it just unsettle the housing markets further? Right? That's all we're going to be talking about today. Remember, Waves is all about you, as you are the why in Waves. So be a part of the conversation every single day and add your voice to the discussions. Head on now to YouTube at Official Upgrade TV. Like, share, subscribe, and invite your friends and family to the show now. When I open my phone lines, of course, I'd like to hear your say. You can also drop your comments on YouTube, and we'll gladly read it out here for our viewers. And as always, here is a quote for tonight for you to ponder on. And the quote says, "Every Nigerian deserves a roof over their head, but regulation must go hand in hand with development." And this was said by Ahmed Dangiwa, Minister of Housing and Urban Development. Of course, we're going to touch on this later. It's part of our conversation. But first, we're going to go on a quick break. And when I come back, I'll take you through some stories making headlines today. Stay with us. Welcome back. If you're just joining us tonight, we're going to be talking about housing, the cost of housing, and how the House of Reps are proposing like a cap of 20% on whatever increase you want to make as a landlord. But first, let's go into the news. The first news I have says Dangote Group denies ownership of truck in Akumba Akoko accident. I brought this news to us yesterday. There was an accident in Ondo State involving a truck that had the logo of Dangote on it that killed, a pregnant woman, her child, and some others. Now, Dangote has refuted reports circulating on social media and on some online platforms linking it to a truck involved in a road accident in Akomba Akoko Southwest local government area of Ondo State. Now, the clarification comes after reports surfaced on Wednesday that 3 persons lost their lives in a road crash in the university town of Akomba Akoko. The sector commander of the Federal Road Safety Corps in Ondo State, who confirmed the incident in a telephone conversation, revealed that the accident, which occurred around 7:30 p.m., involved a truck loaded with stone dust and a motorcycle. Now, the truck was said to have lost control and rammed into a barricade in front of the university. However, in a statement on Thursday, the Dangote Group noted that the truck involved in the unfortunate incident does not belong to Dangote or any of its subsidiaries. Now, they said verified vehicle registration details confirm that the truck with plate number JJJ365XB is owned and operated by an independent logistics company with no affiliation to the Dangote Group. For the avoidance of doubt, the truck was not conveying any Dangote products, but was transporting crushed stones in reused sacks bearing various brand names. Dangote Industries maintains a strict policy on fleet management and vehicle identification, ensuring that all its trucks are properly branded, tracked, and operated by trained personnel under rigorous safety and compliance standards. For clarity, all genuine Dangote trucks carry distinct company markings and fleet numbers, making them easily identifiable. I like that it came out to make this clarity today because as at yesterday when it happened, and with the visuals we saw of the so-called truck, it was clear that of course, there was Dangote all over the truck. So it's just easy to say, oh, it was a Dangote truck and all of that. And this is not the first time Dangote is coming to say, oh, this is not our truck. There was one other incident of a so-called Dangote truck hitting, some guy on a motorcycle. And everyone was, very upset. Oh, Dangote, you guys are always doing this. And again, they released the press statement saying this is not one of our trucks. So now it makes me ask, why would you brand your truck as an independent company that has no affiliation whatsoever with the Dangote Group? Why would you brand your truck Dangote? I mean, is that not an impersonation of some sort? I don't know what to call it, but thankfully they came to debunk this, because we would always want to think, oh, it's Dangote again, but let's stop doing this. Let's stop putting people in trouble, right? So imagine it's not even a reputable company like Dangote. Imagine it's another company that you take their brand, their logo, and put on and slap it on a truck. Of course, before we are speaking English, you would have closed down the business or something, But anyway, like I said, it's good that they came to clear this up. And of course, we are retracting from what we said yesterday, but also we send our condolences to the families of those that lost their loved ones. And that's it on that story. The second story I have says INEC faces backlash as 2027 campaign posters emerge nationwide despite electoral ban. Now, this story says political observers and stakeholders have aired their views on the failure of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to control the activities of the political parties in the country. There is the belief that laws and regulations are hardly followed, with institutions in the country showing weakness or turning the other way when they are to enforce the laws. Now, INEC's approach in managing the excesses of these political parties, especially the ruling party, has been widely condemned. In a recent roundtable organized by the Electoral Umpire to discuss ways and possible solutions to these challenges, especially that of premature election campaigns in the country, it became clearer to the electorate that INEC has limited powers in handling some of these issues. The ruling power has been the biggest offender on the prevailing issue, and this was made manifest after Abuja residents woke up to see a gigantic billboard all over the city featuring President Bola Tinubu holding his wife Remi with a clear message: grassroots support for Tinubu 2027. However, the argument is that the president or any other aspirant may have may not have initiated these campaigns themselves. It could have easily come from the third parties doing so without clearance from the aspirants to gain recognition or favors whatsoever. Now, the Daily Post can report that other billboards reading Tinubu Continuity 2027, often alongside Governor Omar Namadi, among others, were mounted on major roads and public places across the country. This particular story reminds me of a couple of weeks ago when I came on this table and I was talking about how on a particular Sunday, coming back from church, we couldn't find a way to, we couldn't drive past a certain area. Why? Because there was this rally, I don't know what to call it, right? A large gathering of people, and then everywhere you look was a flag of the APC, and then you're seeing people, it looks like a campaign ground, right? And then, I mean, there was a time if you're driving through the Third Mainland Bridge, for those watching from Lagos, you will see, oh, Tinubu this, Tinubu that. And the same INEC came out and they told us, oh, no campaigning until so time. And if you're found culpable, you're going to be, you know, of course, they told us what the punishment was going to be. But somehow you're made to believe that whatever decrees or policies or even punishment that they announced then, of course, it's not for everybody. Because tell me why, I'm telling you from what I'm seeing in Lagos, why you move around and you're seeing APC flyers, billboards, you know, and then it's not like it's the previous campaign. It's not the previous campaign posters. You're seeing 2027, there's one I saw, door to door, I don't know, I can't really remember now, door-to-door campaign for Tinubu. I don't know, I can't remember, but I think I saw it around Third Mainland Bridge. And you wonder, INEC keeps coming out to say, oh, don't do this, don't do that. And the ruling party clearly are still doing it, and nobody is hearing anything. Does it mean that these laws that you're putting in place, these policies, these announcements, are not for everybody? Is anybody above the law? Do with that what you would. And to my final story, 2027, Niger Delta politicians urge Jonathan not to run. Now, the story says some Niger Delta kingsmen of former President Goodluck Jonathan have urged him not to run for presidency in 2027. They enjoined the former leader to support President Bola Tinubu instead. Now, prominent Niger Delta ex-militant commander, Chief Government Ekpemu Polo, who is also known as Tom Polo, is the arrowhead of the group, persuading Dr. Jonathan to jettison his bid. The ex-militant commander said the public mood does not support his aspiration. Sources say Tom Polo told Dr. Jonathan that the psyche of his kingsmen in the Niger Delta was unfavorable to his rumored ambition of returning to power. Tom Polo, who is a convener and founder of the PIBA Door-to-Door, also explained to him that his kinsmen were largely in favor of President Tinubu's second-term bid. He said Dr. Jonathan may not secure his the home support if he insisted on running for presidency on the platform of any political party. Now, according to sources, Tom Polo impressed it upon Jonathan to support President Tinubu in the spirit of continuity. Tom Polo urged former President Jonathan to borrow a leaf from his wife, Dr. Patience, and Bayelsa State Governor Doye Diri, who had joined the movement for the re-election of the president in 2027. I really, really think you should allow the man to make his decision. According to the laws and constitution of Nigeria, as long as you're eligible to run, it doesn't, you can always, come on guys, come on. There's no way it's written that you come in. It's 4 years that we agreed though. When did we start doing 8-year tenure? And why are you trying to impress on everybody to, come on. If he decides to run, that's his choice, right? If he doesn't want it, that's fine too, okay? But for you to come out and say he's not going to get support from the home front, I don't think that's appropriate, right? You don't speak for those in the home front. But anyway, guys, that's all the stories, of course, that caught my interest today. And we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll dive straight into our topic for tonight. Stay with us.
Tell us you're a Nigerian without saying a word. Energy security is one of the most pressing issues for many developing countries like Nigeria. And if there's going to be any meaningful progress, addressing our energy issues is non-negotiable.
I need to see light from my house. Make them do something.
Band A is expensive. I literally have to turn off all my appliances just to reduce costs.
We need light.
Introducing the Energy Outlook, your go-to show for everything energy. Every week, we'll bring you the latest insights, innovation, and in-depth analysis of Nigeria's energy sector. From policy discussions to regulatory insights, we'll analyze the key decisions influencing growth and sustainability in the energy sector. We'll bring you the human stories behind the headlines, giving you a personal perspective on the broader energy challenges. Join me every Friday at 6 p.m. for the Energy Outlook, your guide to the future of energy, where energy means business.
Thank you for staying tuned. And if you're just joining us, tonight's conversation, we're talking about the rent cap proposal that the House of Reps made. And we're asking, can 20% limit save tenants or can it harm landlords? Now, let's hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation by sending me an SMS or WhatsApp to 0818-038-4663. Also, the phone lines are open. You can call on 0702-500-7749 and also on 0701-4242-420. Let's hear your thoughts. Now, the conversation around housing affordability in Nigeria, it seemed to have taken center stage this week, right? Especially after the House of Reps proposed that motion to cap annual rent increase at no more than 20%. Now, the motion, of course, I mentioned earlier, it was sponsored by Honorable Basi Akiba. It stems from growing public frustration, basically, over the arbitrary rent hikes, especially in urban centers like Abuja and Lagos, and, Port Harcourt as well, where you're seeing new infrastructures every day, which is often triggering immediate rent surges, right? I have friends who have come and told me, oh, you won't believe my landlady went from this to this, or my landlord this from this to this. And then, somehow you're forced to even pay these things because the stress of going to look for another house, that is as good or as comfortable as the one you currently have. And then thinking that, of course, the new landlords have also increased it, so you're even paying times two. So it's very, very tiring, right? So, in some parts of Abuja, for instance, rents have reportedly jumped from 800K to 2.5 million within a year of road completion or area development. Lawmakers argue that this cap would protect tenants from exploitation and ensure stability in the housing market. But critics, including property developers and economists, have warned that rent control could discourage investments, reduce housing supply, and even push landlords to demand larger advance payments. Right? That's an angle to look at it from. So while the bill sounds like relief for struggling tenants, looking at Nigeria's condition now with the economy, it also raised tough economical and legal questions. Can Nigeria regulate rents without stifling the housing market? Right? Joining me now to unpack this proposal, its feasibility, and every possible impact on both tenants and landlords, I have Osage Alfred, partner and head of strategy at West Norwood Realty. Welcome, Osage, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, so let's dive right into it already. So from a realtor's perspective, right, how realistic is this 20% rent cap in Nigeria's current housing market, especially with inflation, high building material costs, and, property taxes? Walk us through it, please.
Okay, so it's important for us to understand the fundamentals that drive real estate as an investment.
Okay.
On a particular program, I was trying to explain to the audience that real estate cannot just be seen as a social good.
Okay.
It must also be seen as an investment good. Now, if you look at billionaires all over the world, you would see that one of the areas where they store capital is real estate.
Okay.
And I can tell you again that no country is richer than its real estate assets. And that is why even Lagos State at some point in time understood this, and they had to go into infrastructure development. Because when you look at what we have in Lagos, infrastructure development drives the economy. It drives a lot of things. And so when we look at real estate, we must look at it as an investment good and also as a social good. Now, creating the balance has been the challenge, right?
Okay.
And it's because we need to work ourselves back a bit and say sincerely that we have not really paid attention to the shift in the market. So there was a time people were owning houses they just want to own the houses, really, because it was just a store of capital. I just have this property here, and it's just it feels good to own a property.
Yeah.
Beyond that, right now, people have seen that one of the characteristics of real estate is that it provides edge over inflation. So when you say you have a good investment, it means that it must provide a good edge against inflation. So when you say you are capping rents, regardless of what is happening, it means that you are not allowing that investment asset or that industry to run in line with market forces. It means that there will be some limitations to which the market can grow, and even you can optimize the opportunities therein. One thing we need to understand is that housing is one area where is one industry that employs a lot of labor. Now you look at somebody that wants to develop, or the person buys the land.
Okay.
He needs to get a lawyer, he needs to get a surveyor, he needs to get some people to clear the land, he needs to get an engineer to run soil tests and the likes. And at the end of the day, the person moves from there and says, okay, I want this kind of design. He's going to check town planning laws, going to check regulatory standards, and employs an architect to design something for him within the law. Now, when they are done again with that stage, they come back to the land and start to say, okay, we want to develop. They bring in several artisans from block, wet works, to which includes cement purchases, which is procurement. You want to also get some labor to site. You also want to get a power to site, because you need power to run the site. You need security. You also need you're also paying taxes on even owning the land. You have to also engage financiers who are going to bring in money to the system property, and look at the impact that one individual is having in the economy. So it means that if that man decides not to do that, that impact will be so much. Now let's compare it with maybe 100,000 of people or 1 million people deciding not to do that. What would the impact be? So it's important for us to understand that there's a need for a balance. The intentions are very, very good, but we need to look at things holistically, because there are always two sides to a coin. Even our currency has two sides to it, right? We are talking about tenants, and you are talking about the producers of these properties that the tenants come into. Now, if you don't, what framework, what opportunity, what platform have you given the owners also to thrive? Because it's a mix in the market. Some people will say they have built houses for a while, they paid off their loans, there are several parts to it, and that's why the government is also looking at reducing the interest rates, the lending rates right now. So my perspective is that 20% cap is going to be a difficult situation in our economy, because it's not just 20%. It's not just to have a cap. It's also a function of, okay, if I don't want to let out my property, what happens?
Yeah. Anyway.
If I don't want to leave it vacant, you understand. So that cap thing needs some level of some brainstorming to understand the different sides to it, and so that we know that apart from the cap, we are dealing with this, because it's not just one answer to this problem of housing.
Well, to be fair, it's just a proposal for now, right? Now, moving on, lawmakers have argued that these arbitrary rent hikes exploit tenants. And to be fair, I from personal experience, I think most landlords are actually using it as an exploitative move, right? You're not doing anything, no renovation whatsoever. You just wake up and you hike the rent, right? But do you agree that some level of regulation is necessary? Or also, do you see it, on the other end, do you see it as, do you think this government interference is right? Would you, first of all, would you call it a government interference into private property rights, of course? Or do you think it's a necessary interference?
Okay, so we need to also understand that every Nigerian has the right to housing.
Okay.
It's a right that every citizen has, right? And government has the highest responsibility to ensure that they create an environment where that right can be easily accessed, easily, what will I say now, progressed to a large extent. Now, but the challenge here is that in exercising that right, in ensuring that right is available and giving people that access, it is not just rent.
Okay.
And rent is a symptom. Rent is the last thing. Nobody builds and says, I want to collect this rent first. So what they start from is, okay, what do I want to do here? Because the outcome for every investment in property is in threefold. It's either I want to own it, I want to stay inside the property, or I want to lease it out as an investment for periodic cash flow, or I just want to sell. It's always within these three buckets. So now, if you look at it, it means that if I'm staying in my property, I'm off the rental market. So government says it's fine. So if I sell to someone else, if somebody can buy that property and stay in that property, it's okay. Now, this was what was happening previously, where the investment side of it was not a major issue. So coming in right now, I would say that government, I'll call this government intervention, which is required because industries like this that touch the rights of the average citizen needs to be regulated.
Yeah.
There is something we call industrial analysis. When you carry out industrial analysis,
Osagi, you're breaking up. Can you hear me?
There's a pair in real estate is currently low. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Is it better?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Is it better now?
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. So I was saying that when you analyze industries, there is an analysis that is done that is called, you use the 5 forces of Potter. And one of the perspectives is the entry barrier, right? When it comes to real estate, the entry barrier into real estate is very low, which means that an average malam on the road can sometimes stand and say, okay, you know what? Or a gate man or a security person can say, oh, you know what? I know the owner of this property. The person wants to sell and I can give you access. Are you ready? Get me somebody. And the guy says he collects a 10% and that's it. Why? Because there is no regulation as regards who and who is supposed to be in that space.
Yeah.
Now, we have the estates of, we have ESVABON that regulates the estate surveying and valuation firm, valuation practice in Nigeria, that establishes the fact that estate surveyors and valuers are supposed to carry on the assignment of estate valuation practice in Nigeria. And also, they have been trained. They've gone through ethical processes to ensure that these things are in place, right? So what then happens is that because over time, the regulation has not been so strengthened, what you find is people then say, oh, you know what, I don't want to pay 10% to these guys. There's a way I will do it, and I will be able to get what I want. But what happens is that it then throws in unethical people into the market that commit unethical offenses. And at the end of the day, because they are mostly unethical, then what they are after is just the 10% or a 20% or a 30% of the rent. And before you know it, it's now a function of the rent is at this level. So if I'm able to get 10% of 2 million naira, that's the 200,000. So I will tell the guy he was going to pay this, going to pay this, is going to pay this. And that's why if you look at the issue about this rent housing thing, I was saying we are capping rent. It's also a symptom of something. It is not the problem. In problem analysis, you need to gather all the information, all the relevant information. You need to forget about any form of biases on the part, because if you are working, it's as if we are trying to work from the answer to the question. We are supposed to first understand what the problem is. The problem first is that our population is growing at a geometric progression. The land mass is not increasing. We are looking for ways to go vertical. The cost of going vertical is increasing also. Government taxes, government approvals are not cheap. Cost of construction is no longer cheap, and that is why you see situation today that developers are looking at beyond Lagos. They're also looking at what do you call them, Ibadan. They are looking at places like Ondo. They are looking at places as Ekiti. If you go to Abuja, they are looking at neighboring states.
Yeah.
If you go to Port Harcourt, they are looking at neighboring states, because they found out that they need to break even. Or else you can't force a property into the market, because the market has its own interpretations and it has its own systems and frameworks by which it works and it operates. So trying to force it is going to be an issue. But the only issue about this is that demand has always been higher than supply. And that is one of the major problems that we need to address. Yes, government is trying to do that, but it's important that we address that problem. Permit me to give this analysis quickly. Just let me add this data. Now, it is said that we need about, say, an average of 550,000 housing units per year that government is to provide, right? Now, when we look at what has happened in the past 8 years, from 2015 to 2023, 8 years, we were not able to deliver 200,000. We were not able to deliver 500,000, right? Now, what that tells you is that within those 8 years, the population has increased. And look at it, the number of people moving into the urban centers are increasing on a daily basis, because they say to themselves, you know what, I need to come into the urban centers so that I can live and I can operate there. And you have situations where the Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, using them as a case study, are becoming very choked. You have traffic in the morning, places that you don't used to have traffic, you start to see traffic. And because of this pressure, you start to see infrastructure decay in our system.
Let me coach you. Let's go on a quick break, very quick break, and then we'll come back and continue the conversation. Please stay with us. Back, we're talking to Alsage Alfred about housing cost and how the House of Reps are proposing a 20% cap on all the increase we can think about as house owners. Alsage, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
Great. So,
can you hear me?
yes,
Okay.
I can perfectly. So I hear you, right? So you're saying that the government is not, they're not nipping their own parts in the bud, but then they want to act like they want to provide remedy for the tenants, right? Because like you said, getting government approvals are not cheap and all of those things, right? So I think I get you. But I want to ask, so are you saying that this policy, if passed into law, of course, would affect investor confidence in the real estate sector, particularly among private developers and mortgage institutions?
So what I see will happen is this. When you say annual cash flow will be capped at 20% increase, right?
Yeah.
Now, what happens is if I go to the bank and the bank gives me loan at interest of 35% on an annual basis, right?
Yeah.
And inflation in the market is sitting above that 20%. The question is, how do I pay back?
Right.
there are problems, there are challenges that are being faced by this category of people on the other side of the coin that we need to actually address and see how we can reduce the pressure.
Right.
Now, it's now a function of which, if it's like you said, is a proposal, and it's possible that it's not going to be a universal 20%. 20% will be applied to every aspect of the real estate market. We have industrial, we have residential, we have commercial leases where offices actually operate in. Now, we also have the high-end properties, we have the mid-range, we have the low-range, if I'm going to use those three cadre. Now, I want to assume that those 20% will not apply across board. So what you then try to see in that situation is investors will move into places where they understand the risk and they can control the risk. Now, if the cost of funds will not drop, it means that financiers will not be ready to fund projects within those environments. What happens is that the rate at which housing, for instance, in this case, are being developed will reduce, because you need to go to your pocket, you need to look for family members, you need to look for friends with reduced interest rates to commit funds to your project. So what you naturally see is that people start to pause for a while. They try to understand what this may result to. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. What this may result to, and at the end of the day, they will reduce their their production share in the market. Now, what will now happen is people want to diversify. They want to balance their portfolio in terms of projects. Okay, this 20% is in the housing sector. Let me move my project. Let me move my funds into commercial. Let me move my funds into retail. Let me move my funds into agriculture. Let me move my funds into industry. Now, the question is, supply has never been okay. Now, if supply drops further, it means that market forces will kick in. It means that even when you want to do the valuation of your assets, because you have capped 20% on the rent, it means that the value of your assets can only grow at a certain rate in the market. And it also affects the economic value even of our states, because it is the value of the land, the value of the real estate that also adds to whatever value that we're talking about. We're talking about the banks. The banks are saying they've been capitalized by XYZ billions, right? Or trillions, right? We're talking about the insurance companies. Now, for instance, the head office of a typical bank is valued at a certain amount. So if they have residential units that they own, it means that by the time you are doing a valuation of all those assets, it's going to be impacted. So what will happen is that as people shift from residential to other land uses, what will be now, you will see the impact that will have on residential. What are we going to do concerning the approval process? Because again, permits me to have this, that there's a value chain. Okay. There's the land acquisition. There's the land acquisition. There's the development design stage. There is the actual construction stage. There is the disposal stage. Rent sales are at the disposal stage. They are always, it is those two points are always output of the value chain. So it is what you run through the pipeline that brings out the rent and the sale price. So for instance, if the cost of an average house in maybe, let me use Lekki Phase 1, is about, say, 10 million naira. Cost of producing an apartment, 10 million naira. No landlord will ask for, no property owner will say, I want to sell for 50 million naira or 350 million naira. Because it is obvious. Another thing is that we don't have data.
Right.
What is the average cost of a unit in Lekki Phase 1? What is the average cost of a unit in Ikoyi? What is the average cost of a property in Abuja? Then let's ask ourselves, are they all on the same level that we say, okay, 20% rent? Because again, you want to say to yourself, if I produce this thing at a certain rate, why should I hold it as an investment property?
Right.
The world is a global village. If I have 20 billion naira, should I invest in our housing markets, or should I take it elsewhere? So every time in the morning when I'm on the road and I tune to a particular station, they are marketing foreign investments for people to become citizens of those countries.
Yeah.
So if those investments are giving better ROI, why should I keep mine?
Right.
And those are the instabilities that we need to really address. Again, the intentions are very good, but I think it's important that we look at it holistically. And even at this point, call in professionals. You have the estate surveyors and valuers. You have the builders, the developers. You have the lawyers. You have the town planners. You have the economists. You have the lenders. You have the insurance companies.
I'm
representatives together.
I'm glad you mentioned this, because I was going to ask you, right, rather than just entirely resist this regulation entirely, right, how can the private sector collaborate with the government to expand affordable housing? How can they work together?
Okay, I would say first that, okay, this 20% is not being resisted, all right?
Okay.
What the private sector would say is it requires some deeper level of critical thinking,
okay,
so that we can identify the real problems and be sure that we can, after a year or two, start to see progressive changes in the lives of the people, in our economy. Now, taking it back to what you've now asked, right?
Yeah.
I just said that we have the value chain.
Yes.
And we have different players. A constant player in all the aspects is government. In that entire value chain. You cannot buy land and move it from one person to the other, and you say you have successfully done that without the consent of the government. You cannot say you are starting a development without the approval of the government. You cannot say that you have done this development without passing all those cube tests of construction and the likes. You cannot say that you have sold without the government in it. And even in some parts of the country, rentals, tenancy, you have tenancy laws. So already there's a position there, right? Now, for each of these places, you have different professionals working. And if you see that professionals are working, it's important that there's a think tank that looks at it economically, just as we've done to the tax system. A lot of different people sat down, different professionals sat down to say, this is what it should be. And I believe that they didn't just come out with what we have today, but they looked at it critically and they said to themselves, you know what, this is the impact of this. Scenario testings were actually done. Sensitivity analysis were done to see the best outcome. The truth of the matter is we cannot have the best that takes care of everybody. At this point, as we are moving forward as a country, everybody has to take some level of pain. But what we are saying is that we should try to find a balance. So the professionals are the ones that first interact with individuals that decide to work. They are the ones that are advised to say, do this and do that within their experiences and capabilities of the law. So they interact with the government. So what this means technically is that everybody, every stakeholder needs to sit down and look at this as a national issue and then address the matter. Not just a segment, a sector, or a group of people looking at it. Every stakeholder, every professional group that has high interest in the housing sector needs to sit and look at it. Now, I also want to say that some governments are trying their best to deal with these things, to be honest with you.
Okay.
We've had recently we've seen situations where the lending rates, the interest rates on loans for funding projects, purchase of property, has dropped below the 10%, now 9%, right? And also, you've seen situations where government has been, some state government have been partnered with some developers. But again, the truth again is that when we define affordability, what is affordability? Can a level 2 person in the civil service buy some of these properties? So the question is, we need to tell ourselves the truth that these are the cadres of people that we have. The last time we did population census was a long time ago. Are we going to do something like that so that we have real data about our people? Who are these people that we are talking about? Where are they? And I think the new laws that we're talking about that is going to kickstart in 2026 and other innovative ideas that may come up are going to give us data about the country, about the people. So this information would actually help us to say to ourselves, okay, I have 10 people in the room. I think 3 of them are high-end guys, and we have 7 of them that are low income. It means that whatever we are doing is to see how we can bring these people into the housing rights systems. And then we tell the high network guys, so this is what we want to do to address some of these things. So again, in 5 seconds, let's bring in all the people, professionals, and let them sit, representatives, and let them come up with a proposal because it's a national issue.
All right. So finally, right, the final question I have for you. In your view, with all of these things you've said, what would be a fair and sustainable rent policy for Nigeria? I mean, one that protects both the tenants and also without crippling the landlords themselves. What would it be for you?
Okay, so what I would say first, it is very unethical, and my religion does not permit that you actually make people worse off than they are, trying to impose they are not rent, sometimes it's penalty. What some people call rent is not rent, it's penalty, because you moving somebody's rent just in 1 year from 800,000 to a 2 million naira.
I mean, sorry to cut you, right? I have a friend
that actually supposed to be this case.
I have a friend, her husband bought a new car and the landlady increased the rent and said, you get money to buy a car now. So imagine that kind of scenario.
I will give you another scenario. So there's this property where the tenants I heard about the story where you have this tenement building and the tenant has been there. The landlord stays in the house, and the tenant had this naming ceremony. He blocked the streets, and it was party. 3 months after, he bought a car, and the man was just watching him. Then the next thing, in one room, he bought one window unit, horsepower, 1 horsepower AC.
He went to buy AC.
The landlord had to say, the landlord had to write him and say, you know what, please leave my house because I think you have outgrown this place. You need to have your own space. So why I'm saying this also is that we need to also help ourselves to define what wealth is supposed to be called.
Right.
What should be the standard? We compare ourselves. If I don't use an iPhone 17 Pro Max, I am not yet at a certain level. So some people want to move into some places because that is where they think they belong, But again, like I said, it is wrong for property owners to increase rent astronomically without any basis at all. Now, it is also important to note that professionals need to advise landlords. I advise my landlords. Sometimes one may say, oh, you know what, we need to increase rent by this. At the beginning I sit with my landlords, my clients, and I say, we are going into this year. So these are the list of tenants you have, and this is how they perform. They have been very good. This person has been very good. So this is what we are proposing. Sometimes the landlord may say, you know what, we want to increase it by XYZ amount, and I'll say no, sir. I want to suggest to you that this is what we should do because there should be ethics in our society.
I agree.
Businesses should uphold ethics. Landlords should uphold ethics. And again, the other side to it is that our law should make it easy for both landlord and tenants to operate easily. Whereby if a tenant is defaulting, the law is able to get the tenant to do the right thing quickly. Somebody still told me about the story of 5 years. I think I still saw one on Instagram about a month ago where somebody said, we've been in court for 5 years or 7 years because of the tenant and he has not paid anything. That's why 70% is just one of those things. They are just symptoms. And if the symptoms are not, if the issue is not dealt with, what happens is you see that from rent today, it goes to something else tomorrow, it goes to another thing tomorrow. So in essence, but if we're talking about capping rent, I would not say we should do an arbitrary, I will not agree to an arbitrary figure, a natural figure of 20% across board, right? We can use economic indices so that you can create a balance to say, in some places, in some countries, what they've done is 1% over inflation, 20% over inflation, 5% above inflation. So you know that is what it is. Because when you're even doing evaluation, what happens is that professionals index their yield with inflation. Then they add some factors into it to say inflationary yield or rate plus XYZ risk premium to give that yield. So in rent also, you need to look at it that way so that we can create a balance. And for us to have a very good policy, it means that we need to take housing supply very, very important.
Right.
And another way is to also rethink how we produce houses. It shouldn't always be brick and mortar.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you, Osage Alfred, for your brilliant inputs. Thank you so much and have a good evening. So,
Thank you very much.
A 20% rent cap is, more than political theater, is a test of whether Nigeria can balance fairness with economic reality. If done well, like our guest has told us, right, it goes beyond just capping it. There are so many things, a lot of critical thinking has to go into it. If it's done well, it could restore hope for millions paying rent beyond their means. And if it's done poorly, if we just do it in a very rash way, it may just stifle, investment and worsen housing shortages, right? But for whatever happens, this debate must go beyond the rhetorics. Tenants need protection, but they also need new homes, not just controlled rents. Nigeria must build and regulate and reform, not just legislate. Because shelter is not a privilege. Shelter is a right. Like my guest just said, every Nigerian has a right to housing. That's where we draw the curtain tonight. And just before we go, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Official Upgrade TV. Drop a comment, like, share, and follow all our social media platforms. If you missed our quote earlier, here it is again. It says, every Nigerian deserves a roof over their head, but regulation must go hand in hand with development. And this was said by Ahmed Dangiwa, Minister of Housing and Urban Development. My name is Chioma Kalu, and this has been Waves Prime Time. Have a good night, have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.